HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Leaving Darkness Behind, Recovery from Childhood Sexual Abuse by Dr. Elizabeth M. Altmaier, Ph.D., read by Kim Niemi. Introduction. Defining Recovery. If you are reading this book, then you know it is written for adults who were sexually abused as children. Whether you are a survivor or you care about a survivor or you are interested in learning more about childhood sexual abuse, this book will help you. In it, I share information about childhood sexual abuse, including facts about its occurrence and its consequences for survivors. I am a psychologist who translates scientific findings so that non-psychologists can understand them. Researchers in my field have published thousands of studies on childhood sexual abuse, most of which were published in the past several decades. This book rests on that research. It also describes positive processes called strengths that survivors can work on to help in their recovery. Although you have likely recognized all kinds of personal strengths in others or in yourself over the years, a movement known as positive psychology has reinvigorated interest in strengths and has provided new scholarship about them. Strengths have been demonstrated to be useful to individuals as they confront challenges and even traumatic events. Chapters 4 through 11 will help you learn about strengths and increase your use of them. But more than conveying information, my goal in this book is to help survivors leave their darkness behind. If you are a survivor, you know what I mean when I say darkness. Because I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse myself, darkness is something I have felt in many ways over many years. Darkness is waking up and being disappointed you are still alive. Darkness is seeing evil inside a person who is supposed to love and care for you. Darkness is being so caught up in your thoughts and feelings that you cannot escape them. Darkness is living in the prison of your memories. Darkness is seeing yourself as bad, wrong, dirty, contaminated, and shameful. But it is possible to leave that darkness behind and to recover from its effects on your physical and mental health and your life. Leaving the darkness behind does not mean erasing painful memories. Recovering is not the same as forgetting. Neither is it sanitizing our memories of what happened to us or somehow making the actions of others acceptable. Darkness is overcome only by shining a light on it. We shine a light on our darkness by using certain thoughts, emotions, actions, and practices to accept those memories for what they were and to use them to energize a new, healthy life. Trauma survivors who have left and are leaving behind the darkness are not happy all the time, but they continue to actively build their own recovery through the strengths I elaborate on in chapters 4 through 11. It is not possible for you to throw a switch and change suddenly from darkness to light. Do not believe anyone who tells you that this or that can accomplish that goal. Rather, recovery is a painful and difficult journey, a series of paths you walk along toward a destination. One of the earliest pictures that helped me visualize my journey was a pathway leaving a dark forest and joining a meadow in the sunlight, with flowers and birds and a bench to sit on and think. It is great for you to have pictures of your recovery. You can collect them online, draw or paint them yourself, or use any other method to record them. As you read this book, you'll find out about different practices you can adopt to help you. For example, one day you are feeling sluggish and on the brink of tears for no apparent reason. Because you have learned about grief in Chapter 5, you recognize those signals as meaning that you need to grieve. So you use strategies and strengths to allow that grief to be fully experienced and to help you grow. Many of the chapters in this book deal with emotions because they are difficult companions for us. At this point on your recovery path, you will find that some strategies and strengths work for you now, and in the future you will find that others are a better match. How is this book different from a self-help workbook? One way is that you will learn more about the science behind strengths and strategies. Understanding that content may take effort, more so than trying out an exercise. But I believe that understanding the science will help you adopt the strategies in the full knowledge of their meaning and intended effect. Although this book is not a self-help workbook, I do list many of those in the resources section at the end of each chapter, because those workbooks go into more detail on exercises than I can here. I should note that I cannot cover every possible situation survivors face. An example is the difficult situation of confronting your abuser or disclosing your abuse. That choice gives most survivors great distress because there doesn't seem to be a right decision. Disclosure of abuse creates terrible tension in families and can result in the survivor being shunned or their experience denied. But holding the information in, especially if you are in contact with the abuser or that person is in your family, is equally terrible. This decision is a central barrier to survivors' growth and healing. Again, I list workbooks and resources that can be helpful to you, although I cannot give you a step-by-step guide to decision-making. Ultimately, you will create a portfolio for thriving. This portfolio may have tangible aspects, such as journals, pictures, photos, audio recordings, and so on. When I speak of a portfolio, I am referring to a collection of resources you can access and strengths that exist within you to meet the challenges you face. As you develop these resources and identify and build your strengths, you will put them to work for you at different points in your recovery journey. What is in this book? The first 2 chapters of this book provide foundational information on childhood sexual abuse. Chapter 1 includes facts about its occurrence and effects in childhood and adulthood. It also discusses and corrects misbeliefs about childhood sexual abuse. In Chapter 2, I examine the concept of complex trauma, which can be a helpful way to understand your present situation. Chapter 3 explains recovery, setting it as a bridge between the information about childhood sexual abuse, Chapters 1 and 2, and the resources provided by the strengths of resilience, grief, meaning, spirituality, connection, forgiveness, and hope. Chapters 4 through 10 each focuses on a strength, providing information about that strength and exercises called self-assessments to help you apply the information to yourself. The final chapter, Chapter 11, ties all this content together in the concept of thriving and describes how to create a strengths portfolio for yourself. All chapters include several features. Recovery milestones list the important points covered in each chapter. Self-assessments are exercises you can use to learn about you. Insights from psychology present the results of a research project that is especially relevant to the chapter. And each chapter ends with a list of resources for additional reading or exercises and self-assessments. If you wish to read further regarding a specific research study covered in a chapter, you can locate it using the reference list at the end of the book. You may be a journaling person. I know that I was not. But I encourage you to try journaling as you read this book. There are many places in the chapters where you are prompted to write out a response. Even if you have not journaled in the past, treat yourself to a real paper journal or get your favorite note-taking app ready. One of my dear friends, a survivor herself, was so committed to getting me to journal that she kept giving me differently formatted journals. I am finally getting more comfortable with that process and can see its benefits, and I'm sure you will too. I also encourage you to use this book in a way that best suits you. That may be to start at the beginning and end at the end, but you can also start with any topic that interests you and cover the chapters in any order. If previous content might be necessary to understand something in a chapter, I provide a brief summary of that content so you don't have to read the previous chapter until you're ready. I also use headings intentionally to alert you to the content and help you avoid being triggered. If triggered is a new word to you, to be triggered is to experience sudden, intense feelings and reactions to a situation or a person. Essentially, to experience a trauma all over again. This is more than something rubbing you the wrong way. Being triggered is a frightening re-experience of the original trauma. If you feel triggered, you can move away from the content, calm yourself down with deep breathing and visual imagery, and set the book down until you feel ready to pick it up again. My goal for this book is to help you use information and tools to envision and enact strategies that are unique to you and your strengths and that help you move you ahead in your recovery journey. I have a more personal call to you here. My pledge to you. Dear reader, it is common to begin a book with an introduction, as I have done here. That section of a book is the author's way of talking directly to you and explaining what they are hoping you will learn as you read the book. But you are in my mind much more often than in a single chapter. Because of the pandemic, I am working from home, and my dining room is my new office. My table holds stacks of books and papers, and my chairs are filing drawer cabinets. And you sit across the table from me. I hear your voice, see your tears, witness your suffering. That was not true of my office on the university campus where I usually work. So it is a good thing we were brought here to be together. Here is what I pledge to you about this book. First, I will do everything I can do as the author to help you feel safe. There is a lot of content in this book that is dark. And in fact, one person who read an earlier draft thought there was too much darkness. But I know, as a survivor myself, that there can never be too much darkness if I am going to tell the truth. Still, you also need to protect yourself. So each chapter has a capsule summary at the beginning showing what is covered in that chapter. And there are headings to help you decide what you might want to read and what you might want to skip and perhaps come back to later. Second, you will understand yourself. It is liberating, truly, to know that what you are experiencing is not because you are bad or evil or seductive or stupid or dirty. You are experiencing the natural and even inevitable results of what happened to you. You were a victim. You are not at fault, no matter who said what to you then or now. 3. You will have accurate labels for your experiences, thoughts, feelings, symptoms, problems, and the like. When I hear you use terms like self-compassion, betrayal trauma, and broaden and build, I will be smiling. You will have become an expert on yourself. Here is my parallel. If you were to be diagnosed with cancer, you would know the name of it. You would learn how it affects your body, and you would have the terms for the treatments you receive. This situation, your situation, is no different. Fourth, you will learn. A lot. You will learn about childhood sexual abuse, about complex trauma, about recovery, and about strengths that will help you along your recovery journey. Resilience, grief, meaning, spirituality, connection, forgiveness, and hope. You will also learn about thriving. If you find the content to be difficult, you may need to pick the book up, read a bit, and set it down. Or it may help to read it while you are doing something else. That is all right. Or you may find that the content demands all of your attention, that you can't read it over coffee, for example, while also binging your favorite show. Again, how you are best able to learn and apply the content is the best way for you to read it. Fifth, you will get to know me a bit. This book is not a memoir, and my story is not your story. But I am a victim, and I am a survivor, and on my best days I am a thriver. Some of that comes through. Dear reader, we share a bond that is unbreakable. It was forged in terrible darkness. The chains hold us down. But I want you to know that this situation is not permanent, and that you can become the author of a new story, the story of your recovery. It is an honor for me to be with you for part of that new story. Chapter 1. Childhood Sexual Abuse. You are not alone. Recovery Milestones. This chapter will help you 1. Learn correct information about childhood sexual abuse. 2. Examine how childhood sexual abuse causes damage in childhood that persists into adulthood. And 3. Describe 3 types of damage from childhood sexual abuse: damage to your body, to your mind, and to your emotions. As I wrote this book, the media was overflowing with coverage of sexual abuse of children and adolescents. For example, Larry Nassar, a physician at Michigan State University and doctor for USA Gymnastics, was convicted of sexual abuse in 2018. At his sentencing hearing, he was confronted by more than 150 women he had abused as children or adolescents. Their deeply emotional testimony extended over 7 days and was witnessed or read by many. The first victim to testify told of her abuse. Starting when she was 6, Nassar exposed himself to her, then masturbated in front of her, and finally physically abused her. When she told her parents and they asked him about it, he denied it. Her disbelieving parents urged her to apologize to him. If you are reading this book, you or someone you love was a victim of sexual abuse during childhood or adolescence. Generally, victims feel isolated in this experience for several reasons. There is public coverage of the topic, but not in a way that helps a particular victim. Victims feel shame and fear and cannot talk to another person about it. And abuse creates ambiguity and disbelief even within victims, so they call their own experience into question. Therefore, my goal in this chapter is to provide information and support for you. This chapter presents information on childhood sexual abuse, including what it is, how often it occurs, and what is wrongly believed about it. I describe what psychologists know about its effects. I explain both immediate and long-term consequences of experiencing childhood sexual abuse. I use chapter headings carefully so you can read sections you feel comfortable reading and return to uncomfortable sections when you are able. As I explained in the introduction, you should feel safe reading this book, and you should intentionally select what you want to read and in what order. In learning about childhood sexual abuse as you read this book, you will see both the term victim and the term survivor. Mental health professionals prefer the term survivor because it implies empowerment after the trauma. But the term victim also is used in this book to mean that the survivor of childhood sexual abuse actually was a victim who was attacked and brutalized. Because doubt sometimes exists, there must be acceptance that people who experienced abuse were not at fault, could not defend themselves, and were truly victims. What is childhood sexual abuse? Child abuse happens when the perpetrator, the person who is the abuser, intentionally harms a minor victim, a person under age 18. And there are 4 types of child abuse: physical abuse, neglect, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. Physical abuse is non-accidental physical injury inflicted on the child, causing injuries ranging from bruises to burns to fractures to death. Neglect is failure of a parent or caregiver to provide for the child's needs for shelter, nutrition, supervision, and medical care. Emotional abuse occurs when the perpetrator interacts with the child in ways that injure the child's normal emotional development. Examples include constant criticism and belittling, such as saying, "I wish you had never been born." Some states also identify parental substance abuse as child abuse. When a parent is abusing substances, it damages their ability to parent, often resulting in neglect of the child. Childhood sexual abuse is a specific form of child abuse in which the child is used for the sexual stimulation of the perpetrator or an observer and to meet adult desires. The abuse may occur once or a few times or over several years. For some perpetrators, the desires are erotic in nature. A person with a sexual preference for children is a pedophile. Pedophiles may not have sexual relations exclusively with children. They may be married or have sexual relations with adults. Other perpetrators have normal non-sexual desires, such as for physical closeness or for control or for affection, that become the motivation for sexual behaviors. Whatever the motive behind sexual abuse, it is always without consent. Sometimes perpetrators claim that the child agreed to the sexual behaviors or wanted it. But a child cannot truly consent because of the child's age, or because of the relationship the child has with the perpetrator, or because the child is emotionally attached to the perpetrator. This inability to consent is also true when the child is an older child or adolescent, and the perpetrator claims the sexual interaction was consensual. Even for older children, there is still a power difference or a physical strength discrepancy or an emotional dependence. Correcting wrongful beliefs about childhood sexual abuse. There are many beliefs about childhood sexual abuse that are wrong. Some of these beliefs persist because they reduce the fear that parents have about the possibility that their child will experience abuse. Others persist because of a lack of familiarity with facts from research. The bulleted statements that follow are facts that correct beliefs that are often wrongly held. Childhood sexual abuse can involve not touching as well as penetration, rape, or other forms of touching. It is wrong to believe that sexual abuse is only genital penetration, either vaginal or anal. Abuse may involve touching. An example is when a child is fondled during a bath or playtime. Another example is when a child is enticed or forced to perform a sex act on the perpetrator. Abuse may also not involve touching. An example is when a child poses for sexually explicit photos or is forced to watch pornography. Another example is when the perpetrator tries to look at a child's naked body or masturbates while watching the child. The interaction can also be digital, as when a child is forced to send or receive pictures or texts that are sexual in nature. Childhood sexual abuse is never provoked by the child. It is wrong to believe that childhood sexual abuse is provoked by the child. Children are not developmentally able to understand the true nature of sexual behaviors. They may believe the perpetrator's assertions that these interactions show normal caring for the child. They may be told they are loved, but the sexual contact is confusing and unwanted. They may feel pain but are told that they liked it. but children never provoke their own abuse. Childhood sexual abuse cannot be stopped by the child. It is wrong to believe that the child could have ended the abuse by escaping or by saying stop. The reason the interactions are abusive is that they are forced on the child, either literally or symbolically. A child may be dependent on the perpetrator, as occurs in families. A child may be emotionally attached to the perpetrator, as occurs in social contexts, such as a sports team the perpetrator coaches. A child may be in a powerless position, as occurs in contexts involving a youth pastor or a camp counselor. Children may also be coerced by threats designed to make them feel guilty or scared. For example, that reporting abuse could lead to the perpetrators going to jail or to the breakup of the family. Only 10% of abuse is caused by a person unknown to the child. The rest is abuse by family members or adults known to the child. It is wrong to believe that in all cases of abuse, the perpetrator is a stranger who finds the child alone in an isolated location or kidnaps the child. Starting in the late 1970s, media coverage increased of crimes in which a child was abducted and killed, and the idea of stranger danger was circulated. Children were taught not to talk to people they did not know, and not to get into a car or van with a stranger. The reality, however, is that 90% of abused children know their abuser. Family and extended family are about half of this group, and acquaintances of the family and children are the other half. Strangers are the smallest group, about 10%. Childhood sexual abuse is not unusual or rare. It is actually common. It is wrong to believe that childhood sexual abuse is uncommon or rare. Statistics about the occurrence of child sexual abuse include incidence and prevalence. Incidence is the number of new cases in a given time period, such as a year, reported by official agencies such as child welfare organizations or by children themselves through survey research. Incidence data from law enforcement agencies reveal that between 1.2 and 1.9 children per 1,000 are abused in a single year, and incidence data from children and teenagers reveal a range of 4 to 32 per 1,000. The incidence for older children is the same as that of new cases of breast cancer for women, a life event we might consider relatively frequent. Prevalence is the number of adults who report having experienced childhood sexual abuse at any time before age 18. Prevalence data reveal that 12% to 30% of adults report experiencing sexual abuse during childhood. There are gender differences in that range. Women report a higher prevalence, 17% to 30%, than do men, 7% to 13%. Although false accusations are sometimes made, they are very rare. If a child makes an accusation of abuse, it should be treated as truthful. It is wrong to believe that many accusations of abuse are false. An argument about false accusations and a related topic, false memory, took place among psychologists in the 1990s. But research on this topic has determined that very few allegations, only about 2%, were later determined to be false. Data also show that most children never tell another person about the abuse. They fear being punished or ostracized. They fear that someone they know or love could go to jail. They fear not being believed. They fear being blamed for the abuse. Responses such as, "He didn't do that to you," "Why didn't you tell me?" and "Why didn't you just say no?" are often what greet a child's disclosure. Childhood sexual abuse usually happens without anyone knowing. It is wrong to believe that someone would know if it was happening.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?